Hello, everyone, and welcome to Stronger Together, a CW Supergirl fan podcast. My name's Snowy.
And I'm Nick.
Today, we are going to be talking about episode 12 entitled Bizarro. In this episode, Kara must deal with a twisted version of Supergirl while venturing into a potential romance.
First of all, I love this episode. That being said, I think this is one of the I don't want to say weakest, but one of the ones that is are basically just establishing what is going to happen in the next 5 or so episodes.
It's kind of a bridge episode,
Yes,
maybe.
yes. Now we are seeing like Max as a villain more than a reluctant ally.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just the episode starts with Max, and it is like 3 months earlier because the last episode ended with Kara and Alex seeing the TV and seeing Supergirl quote unquote rescue someone. And this scene is supposedly like 3 months earlier. And it is basically Max creating this version of Supergirl. During the episode, we start to refer to her as Bizarro. So we will be talking about her that way, Bizarro. And she is, like we established previously, like a Jane Doe, which he experimented on. And this first scene is basically that, like the start of the experiments on her. Like we saw the black IV and the way that her eyes went black and all that. But after that brief scene, it picks up supposedly the day before the Supergirl is in the rescuing someone and Kara and Alex seeing her, and is when she is waking up, quote unquote. But now she looks exactly like Supergirl.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the first of many clones that Melissa will be playing along this show. But he quotes Prometheum Bound from Shelley to
Mm-hmm.
her, which I thought was interesting.
I think so as well because if you think about it, the Bizarro character, whether it's Superman or Supergirl, because that happens in
Mhm.
both their comic iteration stuff as
Yes.
well. You could think about the Bizarro version of them as almost more like Frankenstein's monster. So I do find it interesting they chose to have him quote Percy by Shelley rather than Mary Shelley, but I
Yes.
wondered if they were
Yes.
trying to layer in the fact that he's also a sexist.
It is very possible because I also found that very interesting because I think the first few times that I saw this episode, and I have seen this episode several times, I heard Prometheus and I heard Shelley, and I immediately went to Mary Shelley until I
Mhm.
went this episode and went investigate a little bit more, and it is actually Percy Shelley that he's
Mhm.
quoting. It is interesting to see that maybe it's like you said, like it is a sexist thing because again, this show very explicitly shedding a light on the sexism that Supergirl and Kara face, both as her civilian identity and her Supergirl identity.
One thing I did like about the scene, or the feel of it, because I think Peter did a very good job. He had a lot of
Yes,
dialogue. He had to be very convincing. There's a lot of levels going on with what he's doing. I thought he did a very good job actually in this opening, because it is a lot of exposition,
it
but
is.
I think he delivered it very well. I think the thing that I kind of liked about this opening scene in terms of vibe is it kind of reminded me of X-Files. Like the episodes
Interesting.
and things like that, that kind of cigarette smoking man vibe a little bit with how they shot it and the look of it.
It was interesting to me this time watching it because I couldn't help but notice the parallels with season 4. And
Yeah.
again, like I said, it is the first time that we will see Melissa playing like a clone or a double
Mhm.
of Supergirl. So, but it is interesting because spoilers, Lex in season 4 is doing basically the same as Max in this episode, but the vibes are not exactly the same. Like I said earlier in previous episode, in this show, in this season, Max is acting like a Lex Luthor type villain, right? It is not a secret. It is just that they didn't have access to Lex in the first season.
Mhm.
But it is interesting this because again they are virtually doing the same thing, but the emotion behind it is different in a way.
Mhm. Mhm. Very much so.
But it was interesting. Again, I don't think Peter did a bad job ever as Max. It's just that I never quite connected with Max as villain or a character. I just found him annoying more than anything.
Yeah, that's understandable.
After that scene with Max quoting Prometheus Unbound to Bizarro, we got to a scene at the DEO where Supergirl, Alex, and Hank are talking about that because they're going on the influence that they don't know who this Supergirl person is, right? They are talking about maybe alien activity. They talk about a shapeshifter. Alex has a funny line about asking Hank if he had something to say about that, and Hank is like, even though the script was very comfortable, I don't want to repeat that. Kara mentions like if it's possible that it is a clone, and because Kara is very suspicious of Max, right? So
Mhm.
Alex says that even if Max got a hold of Kara's DNA, the gestational state that it will be this clone wouldn't be like an adult. And I think that was, I guess an Easter egg for the many clones that they have in the comics, especially someone like John Kent, that is a clone of Superman and Luthor DNA.
Mhm.
But they are very suspicious of Max. And Alex says that she thinks that it has to do with the Jane Doe that Hank found in the previous few episodes.
Mhm.
So they get into this mentality that they are going to investigate that.
Yeah, I do like this scene in the sense of I think it is the first time they sort of had one of these, I don't know what to call them, sort of like the
Back
sort
and
of
forth.
back and forth team rundown of what they're sort of having to deal with, in the sense of like they know who Jean is now. They're all
Yes.
kind of, they know who everybody is now. They're all kind of on the same page. So I really liked this scene. I liked their back and forth. Also, the lighting in this scene was fantastic. Like, I don't know, I keep
I
bringing
mean,
up
yes.
things like that, but, like, the lighting was good.
We know that in the production of this season has a higher value than the rest of the show, just because the network that they were at the time.
Mhm.
In terms of, actual budget for TV shows, it's not that much, even though we're talking about millions of dollars. But
Yeah.
it is more than, what we got in the later seasons.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I did like in that conversation, Hank mentions that the woman that he found had like barely any vital signs, that it will be like a miracle of sorts that if
Mhm.
she managed to even speak. So he is very much dismissing the idea
Mhm.
that it is this woman, and he mentions that like Max believes himself a god, but he's not an actual god. I did like, because it goes back to the entire Prometheus thing.
Yeah,
So it was a really nice like dialogue or literal text that is going in the undercurrent of the episode, that is,
yeah,
it doesn't have to be explained beyond that to the audience. And I really appreciate when a show doesn't have to spell things out for the audience,
repeatedly and repeatedly.
es-
Oh.
especially 10 years later now.
No, 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 I do think this season was really good at things like that. I think they were good at explaining things, but not overdoing it. Like, it's and that is a skill, I think, and from a writing standpoint, it is a skill to sort of weave those threads and keep it present and not overdo it.
Yeah, totally.
And
Then we have, Kara going to Katko, and
Mhm.
she tries to talk to Win. And we have to remember that at this point, supposedly, they are somewhat strange.
Mhm.
Even though in the last minutes of the previous episode, Win was like coming around again. But I found this scene. I know they were trying to go for the comedic timing, but also like, why is Wayne so miserable about not wanting to work with Kara for a moment? I don't know. I feel
I
like sometimes I go too hard on Wayne.
I don't know if it was them just trying to remind the audience of what had happened between them, but I felt it was
Yeah.
a tad much. It was a tad much. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Because Win does have an interesting conversation later in the episode, but again, I dislike the entire love triangle the entire season, so it is nothing new. Because apparently, in when we saw this scene on from the previous episode, the Bizarro on TV, apparently she threw a car in the forest or something.
mhm.
It was like uncharacteristically not Supergirl.
Yeah, yeah.
And Win questions this, and Kara is like, yeah, except that that wasn't me. And they have that scene that Win is like, no, 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 I don't want to know. And then immediately going like, yes, tell me everything. Which is supposed to be, the comedic aspect.
Yeah.
But then the elevator things and cars like, oh, I forgot to get Kat's coffee. And then Kat's come in not only with her own coffee, but a coffee for Kara, which is exactly her order. Which very interesting in the sense that that tells you that Kat is not as aloof and she actually pays attention to what's going on around her. And if she actually cared to share that, she would, but she doesn't. But she is acting weird with Kara, something that she
She
calls out
is. She is. It's hilarious.
because
This part of the scene is actually hilarious.
yeah, it is because Kat is actually acting sweet with
Mhm.
someone, so
Mhm.
Kara is freaked out.
Mhm. I would be too.
Honestly, yeah. But they then have like a reporters meeting, and when they talk about the entire Bizarro situation, like how
Mhm.
because we have to remember that Kat feels certain ownership of Supergirl's like public figure, I guess.
She invented Supergirl, come on.
She literally made her, so she's trying to find a way that and how to move the public in one way or another, like shape Supergirl's
Mhm.
image. And
Yeah.
she has all her reporters there, and they are like menace or savior or like Supergirl good, or Cat is Cat, and everyone is like floundering about until Kara is mumbling like maybe that wasn't really Supergirl, and Cat is like, oh really, tell me more. But she comes up with a headline that I don't think is that good, but okay. Like Supergirl question mark.
I have to say I do love all of Callista's little body language sort of acting choices and quips here is like she
Yeah.
starts out with her feet on her desk and then just the progression of her body language is actually hilarious. I think the thing one of the things I did notice after like Kara says her piece, right? And then Kat kind of is like, "Oh, that's not that bad," and blah blah blah. Like you said, not the greatest headline. But the thing I noticed that Kat said is she said we should not believe the worst in people, and I'm like, "Oh, Supergirl influenced you, Kat. Oh, that is so adorable."
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about how Kat is both Kara and Supergirl's like mentor figure, but also like you have said before that also Supergirl shapes Kat in a way.
Yeah.
They make each other like see a version of people that the other doesn't quite see. Kat
Mhm.
is for Supergirl and Kara that kind of cynic in a way that for Kat, Supergirl is like seeing that the best in people and expecting the best from people. So it is a very interesting dynamic that they have going on through the entire show, if you're
Yeah.
being honest. But yeah, that scene basically ends with the reporters all leaving and Kara staying in the office and asking point blank Kat if she's treating her different because she's going on a date with Adam.
Kara clocked her ass. I loved this so much in the sense of I love that Kara like clocked her ass and actually said it to her. I
Kara is probably the one person in the world that actually knows Kat,
yes, I
which I
agree.
guess is some point for Kat is alarming because I think she very purposely put a front, publicly or for people for a reason.
Mhm.
But it is just talking out of my ass because it is nothing that we really explored more deeply because, like we said before in the podcast, she leaves
Yeah.
the show.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of hanging threads. But I love that Kat is like, maybe, no, maybe, I don't know, maybe. So she doesn't really give an answer for Kara, but
Yeah.
Kara is again completely freaking out to the point that when in the next few scenes, she compares Kat's behavior to the invasion of the body snatchers.
Yes. I love this.
First of all, Kara, you my beautiful nerd, you will watch a
I
movie from
love
the
her
50s.
I love her so much. I love her so much. She's such a nerd. I just wanna watch movies with her. Anyway.
That scene that she mentions, like the invasion of the body snatchers, is when Kara, Wynn, and James are walking to the office when they do their super things, and Kara asks Wynn to look for comatose women in the hospital that kind of match her own descriptions. Like
Mhm.
blonde, her height, her complexion, that have gone missing, quote unquote, just because, again, Kara, Alex, and John are going by the thinking that Max is behind the Bizarro thing.
Mhm.
I thought that scene was interesting in the sense that it's playing again the entire, at this point, what geometric figure is that? I don't know. The love triangle, you have like
Love
Kara.
squared.
Oh, it's not even a square anymore because now you have Adam. That is something that they're
Oh,
establishing in this scene, that
it's
Kara
an
got a text
octagon.
from Adam, confirming the date that they have that night. You have like James being somewhat unnerved by that
Mhm. Yeah,
because this is an interesting episode for the James and Kara of it all, and I will
it
get to
is.
that at the end, like, I think.
Mhm.
But then you have like Win being not quite jealous, but also like trying to move on, but also like clocking whatever the heck James and Kara
Mhm.
have.
Mhm.
Because again, he has had for episodes now, like that little turn in his side that Kara is actually interested in James and not in him. But
Mhm.
now he's supposedly moving on. But then you have James being like, "Oh, I'm happy for you, Kara. Good luck in your date. Actually, I'm going to go." Which, it is, again, I don't like the love triangle of it all. But
Mhm.
talking about James and Kara in what it was supposed to be, it is a good foundation. Like, you're going in that direction.
Mhm.
At this point in the episode, I don't think James is even aware that he has feelings for Cora.
No, yeah, because I think he's just sort of more thrown off that, "Oh, Car's going on a date." Like, it's almost like it never crossed his mind that that would happen.
For me, is that he's actually surprised about the feelings that he has about Kara having a date.
Yeah, yeah, that's more accurate, yeah. His, like,
But
reaction to it, but yeah.
yeah, he has like, it is not that he's unaware that Kara will have a date or that he doesn't think that Kara will have a date, but I think he's surprised about his own reaction about that information. And I
Mhm,
think that
mhm.
is what throws him off in this scene. But also, it is not something of this show, but it is something that we start to see more prominently when it's a female-led show about
Mhm.
the importance of the love triangle. And I know that I go on and on about the Kara wanted the relationship, but also like we have episodes like this when Kara is not really thinking about it. She actually, this episode is very interesting in the sense that we have said, like, Kara has said that she wants someone like that, like to have
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
like
yeah.
this, but I don't have the impression that Kara is that much interested in Adam, for example.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree.
Alex have to convince her more than once to go in a date with him.
Yeah,
So it is an interesting dichotomy of Kara as a character of one wanted that person, that someone, but also like not really going in like searching for it. Besides, we know that she's interested in James, for example, but
mhm.
the only time that she went on a date was in the pilot when she had that one like blind date from the apps. You know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
yeah,
Like
that loser.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I I s
it
I
is an interesting character point.
I sometimes wonder with Kara if it's 2 things. Is that maybe underneath it all, she kind of knows what she's looking for. And on the other hand, and I think it also ties into this thing that I think I've said a couple times on this podcast. I always say like I really do feel like Kara is a character, and I mean sort of in this show and just Kara in general across her iterations. I think she really sees people. So I think maybe it's like she kind of knows what she wants, and maybe because she can see people so well and read them, she can tell like that's not going to work for me, or that's not quite what I'm looking for. It's not that the person's bad or anything. It's just some subconscious part of her is like, no. And I think another part of it, at least at this point in the show for Kara, I sometimes wonder if it's also that fact that particularly because she chose to put on the cape, right, and carry the mantle. I think part of her, and we've seen it in the previous episodes I think we've watched for this podcast. I think she's become so much more aware again of what she lost and subconsciously becoming aware of like this survivor's guilt again. And I think for her that it's almost like she'd almost like arguably settled her life a little bit when we meet her, right, in the pilot.
Mhm.
And now her whole existence has gotten tilted again. And I think she's in this very weird space of having to be aware of things maybe she felt she had somewhat processed, or at least inside herself in the feels. I don't know. I think all of this kind of ties into the complexity of her and romance, I think.
Yeah, because now you have also the added thing of we know that Kara has always had this insecurity of not being able to be open with someone. I think that is probably one of the things that made James so appealing, right? She didn't have to keep part of her own self away from him. He knew
Mhm.
who she
Mhm.
was. And I think that is part of the reason why she's so, I don't know, avoidant maybe of looking for romance in this season in that sense, I
Yeah.
guess. My feelings with Adam are complicated.
Valid,
You know.
valid. You're not alone in that. I
Yeah.
think I could say I feel very complicated about it as well. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I
Mm,
can
But
even
I
really
wanted
speak
to
to it, but go ahead.
ask actually something.
Mhm.
Again, we won't go in depth into it, but at the time of this episode being recorded and released, the actor playing Adam was married to Melissa Benoist.
Mhm.
Do you think Adam as a character was always there, or was it because of that situation?
My instinct, I guess, watching the episode season, whenever I rewatch a show, it always kind of feels like the character's shoehorned in.
Yeah.
He's kind of a spork. Like it's not necessary because again, we already had given Kat a son, and I always call it the train episode. I know that's not what it's called, but like the episode with the train that Max Lord designed, and I actually really like the fact that we somehow found out that Kat had this younger son. I
Mhm.
found that aspect really interesting, and then we basically never hear about him again, as far as I remember. And then we get this other, okay, she had another son, which I guess for Kat is interesting, but was the romantic plot line of it really necessary in relation to Kara, I guess. Like I understand that helping Kat reconnect, I think actually was kind of beautiful when I watched it again for the podcast. I felt that aspect of it was really pretty, but and
Yeah.
moving, but the I'm not sure. I don't know. All I could say is to me it feels very shoehorned in, so I'm not sure it was always there.
Yeah, because for me, I always have like kind of complicated relationship with this aspect of the plot in this part of the season. But this time I found it a little bit more, like you said, shoehorning.
Mhm.
I think Adam as a character is fine. I like his relationship with Kat. I really like the depth that Adam's existence gives to Kat, like how she reacts, how she approaches things. I think it's really good for cats. I am not entirely sure that we needed it as a romance for Kara, but then again, then that is what gives, for example, James the like it opens his eyes about his feelings about Kara, but also like I I again my feelings are complicated because of the actor and what
Mhm.
happened after. But
Well, yeah.
I don't know. This time it felt a little bit more showhorn. Maybe
Mhm.
because maybe it should have been a bit longer, like the relationship between
Mm.
them. But also like,
Mhm.
but also I'm like I don't want that either.
Mhm.
So it is complicated for me again.
No, same, because because touching on something you said in regards to, like, Adam in relation to Kat, I also kinda like that at least the dinner scene with him, and then they have to bring in Kara. I like how much it reveals, like, how important Kara kinda actually is to Kat, and how much Kat trusts her, even if Kat will never admit it. But
Hmm.
because she's Kat,
Exactly.
because she's Kat. But I like those, so it's complicated because I think those things, particularly in this podcast rewatch, I'm like, these things were actually really interesting, and I think also arguably very important, at least for Kat and Kara. And then, like you said, like, hearing the fact that Kara's going on dates, the fact that this is in this episode and that it is said, and it's just so, like, there between them as friends, and that that's the lightning bolt kind of for James, and you kind of need that at some point in the season, right? Maybe they could have made it be Win instead of James. Just the fact that Win was interested in her could have been the lightning bolt instead. So I maybe that's why for me a little bit this time I was like, did it need to be this other character? You already had one who was already interested in Kara, who from the beginning of the show.
Yeah,
I think maybe
because
that's
it
why I'm kind of like, why did we need this other person? But
yeah, exactly. Because, like I said earlier, like at this point, what this triangle, what geometric figure is actually in? Because we have Lucy, we have James, we have Win, we have Kara, now we have Adam. So it keeps adding. But again, I don't know if maybe is actually my feelings about the behind the scenes
same,
things that is
same.
influencing my thought, or it is just because it there was another option there. But anyways,
Yeah, I
we
think
have.
I'm not sure we could ever quite detangle that, and I think that's okay, and
Yes,
it's
yes.
valid.
The next scenes are basically Max kind of brainwashing Bizarro about convincing her that Supergirl is bad and is the enemy, and basically
Yeah.
tasking her with killing Supergirl.
Mhm.
I don't know what the end goal is with this besides killing Supergirl, because then you have to we have to think that at this point we know that the Kryptonians are the quote unquote big enemy. So what is
Mhm.
exactly his plan regarding this? Because again, we have to think that Max is thinking that way, right? But then you have
Yeah, yeah.
Bizarro. That is, first of all, I think he realized pretty early on that that is one of the characteristics of Bizarro in the comic, right? He, because we have a Bizarro Superman,
Mhm.
they are like developed like a child.
Yeah.
The Frankenstein comparison I think is very appropriate. That they are like, yes, very strong and they are physically an adult, but mentally they are like a toddler. They are
Yeah.
starting to talk. They talk like broken words and stuff like that. So I don't think his version of Frankenstein is that well cooked in his mind, but I think he just wants her to kill Supergirl at this point. But also, like, that was supposedly his plan against the Kryptonians, right? Or I'm
Yeah.
misreading this.
No, 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 I think so, and I think by the end of the episode, part of me wondered if he did this sort of thing a little too soon in his own plan because he was so maybe overeager, because I think another part of it for him that I sensed in this episode, it almost feels like he really just maybe wanted to kill them, but I think another part of them wanted to control them as, like, his army and toys, and he wanted that power, I guess. Or to control the power they have.
I think John's reading of him is very accurate. He thinks himself a god, and
Yeah,
he wanted to control, the god in the form of Supergirl.
yeah.
He spends the entire episode up until a particular point brainwashing constantly Bizarro into
Mhm,
making her think that Supergirl is bad. And he
mhm,
fails pretty much because, Bizarro has contact with Supergirl. And for example, she goes and attack Supergirl. That this is after Kara leaves her date with Adam. And Earth trolley is dangling and it doesn't move and it's going down. And Supergirl goes to rescue it. And Bizarro comes in. And she doesn't really say anything. Like Supergirl tries
mhm.
to ask who she is, but she literally ignores her. and
Mhm.
goes into the attack, right? But Kara, being Kara, she tries to talk with her. In that fight, they finish dangling the trolley goes down, and Supergirl rescue it. And
Yep.
Bizarro is very confused by it because again, she has been brainwashed into thinking that
Mhm.
Supergirl is bad.
Mhm.
But in that fight, also, the few words that she says, Kara
Mhm.
immediately goes like she, because she mentions it later, she talks like Cookie Monster. And two, in one of those punches, Supergirl crack Bizarro's face. And that is the
Mhm.
start of the original kind of iconic look of Bizarro, right? The cracked
Mhm.
porcelain looking skin.
Mhm. I wanted to say here about these sequences where he's manipulating Bizarro, sort of, right? I think
Mhm.
that's fair to say that's what he's doing. Brainwashing, manipulating, whatever. Because she is mentally like a toddler at this point. But even she can recognize at the end of this fight that, someone's good. These scenes, I thought it was a very interesting choice. Like, this is where, like you'd mentioned earlier, they give Melissa a lot of work in this episode. Like
Yes,
she's doing a
yes,
lot because I want to backtrack a little is even from the start of the show, she always was doing double duty. And I think that's important to remember. She was always
yes.
having to do, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, like Catco Kara, and then she's having to do Supergirl. And then she also has scenes with like Alex when she's at home, right? Where this is a person who knows all of her. This is where she's fully relaxed and she's Kara, right? And all of hers come together kind of in those scenes with Alex specifically, I think. And so Melissa was already having to do a lot of work before this episode came along in terms of just carrying a complex character and various identities. And then you bring her in to do this episode. And I have to say, I do think Melissa is very good at showing the difference. Like we talked about that scene where Kat sees Jean and Kara and Kat Kokara. Like Melissa's very good at showing that difference, right? And these differences, like when she's given the time to do so, I think. And in these scenes with Max, like Melissa's like body language is so different. It's not just her body language, her voice patterns, the rhythm of how she speaks, what she's doing with her eyes is like completely different from anything thus far she's done in the show. And I find this amazing because I don't know, like carrying a show as the lead and then you're getting thrown this. And I realize for actors, they kind of love this because then they get excited because they can play around. But for me, as like someone who's not an actor, like this just looks so insanely complicated to figure out how to do this. Like even in the fight sequence, the way that they fight, the way that they move. Also, that fight sequence was so interesting. I have to say, the show, as this show has gone along, as if we've watched it for this podcast, I think they have gotten better and better at like doing the fight scenes. Like they're not always consistent. Like I think when they have to do more visual effects and things like that, it's a bit weaker. But like this one, you could tell it was physically they had people there and they were doing it and just they're starting to do more tricks with her like in the air spinning things like that and I was like that stuff can't be easy like this is a TV show like you said it doesn't have like yeah it has a budget but like these are things that it's much easier to make them look grander and more epic like in a film because they have more time and more money and it's like I think this show particularly in thus far like it's done such a good job I think of trying to be creative and trying to do different things in fight scenes. And I think this episode in particular, it must have been very complicated because they basically have two Supergirls on screen and they have to make them look distinct. And
Yes.
and then top of that, Melissa's trying to keep the characters distinct as well. Just like really good job on everybody's part, I think, in this episode in that regard.
No, the fight, I was going to mention that it does look great, given that,
Yeah.
it is a great part of it is CGI or at the very least, like you said, like a stunt doubles. But
Hmm.
also, like you mentioned, in that fight that you have Supergirl versus Bizarro, even though they are both played by Melissa in that point, you can really see in the movement how different they are.
Hmm.
Even when you're like, it is at night, a
Hmm.
scene, so it is dark, but even then you can see. And even if you cannot see, because it is a lot of shadow jobs because of cinematography, but also like you can see the way that they move
Mhm.
differently. Like you can tell in every single moment which one of the two is Kara, even though they are both played by Melissa at this point, and
Mhm.
they
Mhm.
quote unquote look the same.
Mhm.
And that was intentional, right? It was intentional,
Mhm.
but it is a very fair point to highlight. So yeah, but I like that. For example, at the end of that fight, Bizarro is somewhat confused because she
Mhm.
sees Supergirl going and saving to save the people. So
Mhm.
that hints that the manipulation of Max is not quite working. But he
Mhm.
kind of changes tactics throughout the episode.
Mhm.
But when that happens, Kara goes to the DO and talks to John and Alex. And that is when she says, like, she is exactly like me, except that she talks like Cookie Monster line, which I found very funny.
Are such
And
a
they,
nerd.
but Kara is such a nerd again. But Alex and John formulate a plan to go after Bizarro with Kryptonite because
Mhm.
they established that she is exactly a Supergirl at this point in the episode.
Mhm.
Kara goes back to Katko and she is asked again on a date by Adam. And he points it as she has to make it up to him for leaving him. And
Mhm.
she's like, fine, they will go on a date that night. Kara goes and talks to Win in the office that they have for the Super Friends. And he informs her that Jane Doe's from the hospitals have disappeared or been transferred to the care of Prometheus Genetics and 7 Jane Does. And
Mhm.
Kara is scandalized because 7 people have been hurt by someone trying to get to her in her mind. That is always like Kara's
Mhm.
point of view. And Wynn mentions that maybe it took Max 7 tries to get to the Supergirl Bizarro that we saw. Then we have another scene of Max manipulating Bizarro because now she has like the crack on her face. Max is like appealing now to her ego and her beauty. He says something like, now she make you ugly or something like that,
Yeah.
which is another commentary altogether.
Yeah.
But after that, when Max goes back to his office, Alex is there. And
Mhm.
they have an interesting back and forth of Alex basically accusing him of being behind Bizarro. And Max pretty much accepting it, but knowing that she cannot do anything because it's not a crime,
Mhm.
technically. The technically is not a
Techni
crime kind of defense.
mm.
But in that conversation, he lets Alex knows that he knows Supergirl's secret identity, or implies it's enough.
Imply yeah. Pretty strongly. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex leaves and goes back to the DEO.
Mhm.
And in that conversation, also, Max pretty much said that he did it, and he explained how he did it. He mentions like the red tornado arm that
Yeah.
Alex gave him.
And that was the
And
second mention
Alex,
of tornado and red tornado
yes,
in this episode, actually.
yeah, it is. It was interesting how they tied it up because
Mhm.
we have seen the red tornado arm pretty much since that episode coming back again with Max, but it was funny. But in the everything is funnier in hindsight kind of thing, I
Mhm.
found it funny that they were like, we leave DNA and pieces of ours everywhere. But then in season 6, they had to go to the past because they couldn't find a single hair of Kara to find in the Phantom Zone. But whatever, whatever.
I have another thing in hindsight, it's kind of funny, is there's a
Hmm.
line when they're in the DEO, when Car's like, "No, it's not an android. I looked into her eyes." And I'm like, in
Yes,
retrospect, this line is kind of prophetic and funny at the same time because she says that about somebody else in season 2. Anyway,
it is Kara just looking into people's eyes.
she sees people.
But yeah, I mean that is basically the undercurrent of the entire
Mhm.
character, right? She
Yeah.
she sees the good in people. We were talking about it earlier. Like
Mhm.
she keeps saying, like, I see the people, and I think that is both very endearing and very much in character from the Silver Age comics
Well,
of the
also
version of Kara.
I think she sees the truth too because I remember, like you pointed out, she figured Max Lord out before
Yes.
everyone else. Like, she did that on her own. Like, the girl has good instincts.
Yeah. Yeah, she does. But when Alex, John, and Kara are, discussing all this at the DEO, once John leaves, Alex goes to Kara and tells her, like, hey, he kind of implied that he knows that we are sisters.
Mhm.
And Kara's like, there is no way that he knows.
Mhm.
Like, he hasn't seen us. Obviously, they don't know that he planted a camera on Alex the last few
Mhm.
episodes, so they don't know. In this scene, also, Alex convinced Kara to go into with her date with Adam, and it goes again back to this thing that I mentioned earlier, that Kara had to be convinced several times about going to the date with him.
Mhm.
But she does, she goes, and they have a very nice date, seemingly. They are like walking and having froyo, I guess. Kara opens up a little bit about her parents. It is a very sanitized human equivalent of she lost her parents in an accident.
Mhm.
But when they are talking and they do kiss, Bizarro comes in flying and just grabs Kara and takes her away.
Mhm. Mhm. It's kind of
Um,
wild when you think about it, actually. Like,
Yeah, I don't know honestly how she doesn't really explain why Supergirl or Bizarro took her to neither Adam or Cat. And
yeah,
that is one
yeah.
of those dangling threads. But because other stuff happens, I don't think we need an explanation for that. But it's one of the things that you pick up when you see the episode like a few times
Mhm. Mhm.
as an audience. But yeah, anyways, they had formulated a plan about going against Bizarro with Kryptonite,
Mhm.
which Kara was against because she's always against Kryptonite. I will say that is always like a threat for Kara. John refuses to go after Max because one, Max is a billionaire, and two, is he has like a very public figure. But
Mhm.
three, and most importantly, I think he says the DO purview doesn't include humans, which will come up in a future episode.
Definitely.
But Alex is like, now she's freaking the freak out
Mhm.
because he implied that he knows about Kara. And if he
Mhm.
knows about Kara, he knows about herself and Eliza. So now she's
Mhm.
freaking out. When Bizarro kidnaps Kara from her date, Alex and the DEO find her and fire kryptonite bullets at Bizarro.
Mhm.
And we have this very interesting scene fight between Kara and Bizarro. And this is the first time that we see Bizarro's powers besides flying and super strength. And we
Mhm.
realize that she has, like, instead of Supergirl's first breath, she has like fire breath. And
Yes.
instead of heat vision, she has like, I don't know, ice vision.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we realize that her powers are opposite to
Yes.
Supergirl. She's like a mirror kind of thing.
Mhm.
But they have a very interesting fight. The fight looks really cool, I will say again. The
Yeah, it's
werewolf
a
was really
cool
cool.
fight.
Well, at the start is the version that looks like Kara, looks like Melissa Benoist.
Mhm.
But after she gets like hit by the kryptonite bullets, she transformed, and that is when we get the iconic look of actual Bizarro Supergirl. The cracked skin, and
Mhm.
the suit for some reason changes. Doesn't really have the S like right. It had it inverted, and the colors are a little bit duller. Um,
Mhm.
it is a cool scene, I will say. Like the
Yeah.
CGI of the cracks coming in and stuff. It is really good. The suit thing is never explained. Don't
Yeah,
wait
no.
for us to explain that thing.
Yeah, no. The fight scene again, it was very inventive. And I think it's
Yes.
I love when they do that. I love when they let themselves be inventive with the fight stuff. It looked really cool, and then the CGI transformation was really good. They really
Yes.
did a good job on it. It holds up. And it's like you said, it goes more to the iconic sort of like cracked porcelain, almost like cracked porcelain doll look that we get from
Mhm.
Bizarro. And I don't know. It just I like that they built up to that. I thought that was a good, interesting choice. But yeah.
I really like also like because we see that Kara herself is basically like holding herself down in
Yes.
attacking Bizarro because she's still trying to get to her because like you said earlier, she said that she saw someone else looking back. So she's
Yeah.
trying to save her.
Yeah.
whatever her is, because in her mind it is this poor woman that was in a coma, right? So
Yeah.
she's trying to save her, but in that fight, after the kryptonite bullets and things, Alex trying to save Kara, she like grabs her and Bizarro flies away,
Mhm.
right? And Kara cannot follow because she's like weak because of the proximity to the kryptonite.
Mhm.
Kara and Alex go back to the DEO, and now Kara is also freaking out because she just realized that Bizarro went after Kara Danvers in her date with Adam, not against Supergirl. So
Mhm.
now they're like, Kara's like, you're right. He knows that is me.
Yep.
So they're freaking out about that.
Yep. As they should, to be honest.
But now Kara is now panicking and she's like, we need to go after Max. We need to stop him. He is the root of all evil, basically.
Yes. It's that hothead in her.
Is what I have been saying. Kara is very impulsive.
Mhm.
Then we have a scene of Max looking at Bizarro because now shit has hit the fan. This doesn't even look like Supergirl. Now it's
Mhm.
not just she cannot speak or that she has like the brain of a child. It's that she doesn't even look like her anymore. So you cannot play that actually Supergirl is evil kind of angle that he was probably going for. But
Mhm.
also like she doesn't look like her anymore. She actually looks quote unquote scary, you know. And two, he seems to be like losing control of her or
Mhm.
of her actions. So his style is still going like in manipulation mode. So he changes strategies and says like, she made you a monster. If I were you, I will go against someone that she loves.
Mhm.
And that basically gives Bizarro the idea of going after James.
Yep.
Interestingly, at around the same time, because again, timelines in shows is a mess. Kara had just broken up with Adam, supposedly. I
Mhm.
did like the line of Adam that he goes like, "Are you breaking up with me? We are not even dating," or something like that. But it is supposedly this very touching scene between them. I do like that Kara is like, if I don't have space in my life for a guy like you, maybe there is nothing for me there. Which again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about Kara's relationship with love and how she wants it but doesn't do anything about it.
Mhm.
So James tries to like comfort Kara when she's at the balcony and she's like, actually I kind of want to be alone, and she
Mhm.
leaves. James stays in the balcony and supposedly a few minutes pass, and then he hears like someone landing on the balcony and he thinks it's Supergirl, obviously. Tries to maybe apologize, I don't know, but he basically stops himself when he realizes Bizarro,
Mhm.
and she basically just grabs him and flies away.
I was gonna say, I do like one of Kat's lines when Kara comes back to Catco. She said, "Well, I guess I'll just go roam the hallways of my building." It's just,
Yeah,
I love
it is.
her.
Kara asked, it is funny because Kara, very ballsy, is like, actually, boss, can you leave me in your office with your son so we can break up? It is very
Yep.
funny. But
Yep.
again, it goes back to the cat sees a little bit more than she lets people know.
Mhm.
Like she sees more than she implies. Anyways,
Yep.
but yeah, it is a very funny scene that, cat squibs going for and so forth. James wakes up tied
Mhm.
in a warehouse of some sort. He has a very interesting conversation with Bizarro.
Mhm.
He wakes up, Bizarro is like a few steps away. She's not really paying attention to him. She's just waiting, and he asks her like, why did she take him? And in her broken words, she basically says like, because Supergirl loves you. And James asks how she knows that. And she says because she and Supergirl are the same. Again in her broken words.
Mhm.
And I think in this scene overall is when James actually realized that he is interested in Kara more
Yeah.
than he thought he did. Because I forgot to mention in an earlier scene, there was a moment between Win and James where they were sharing a drink.
Yeah. Yeah.
And James mentioned something about their sorrows. And Win is like, what sorrows are you talking about? I know mine, referring again
Mhm.
about him having feelings for Kara and Kara not reciprocating. And Win in that conversation basically is like, I don't understand you. You could have this relationship with Kara and you don't seem to go for it. Previously James had told Quinn to go for it. So he's
Mhm.
basically like doing the reverse.
Yeah.
And James is basically says like, I'm not because I'm in a relationship with Lucy. And Win is like, well, no one wants to be with someone who wants to be with someone else.
Yeah.
Which I
He's
thought
not
was,
wrong.
first of all, he's right. But also, like, I don't think in that moment James was even aware that he was feeling that way.
No, I don't think he was. I agree. I think it's the scene with Bizarro and whatever it looked like a warehouse she had him tied up in.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree. I think it was then.
So for me, this is the episode actually that James realized that he has actually feelings for Kara.
Mhm.
First of all, I do think he cares for Lucy. And Lucy doesn't
He
really
does.
shows up in this episode. She's mentioned a few times in the episode. That being said, I do think that he is in that relationship at this point just because it was what he was used to. And that is the reason why he doesn't really thinks about Kara as a partner until this episode when he thinks quote unquote that he's about to lose her, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
With the entire Adam thing. But also like now he has like a somewhat confirmation that Kara has feelings for him, and I think that makes him open up about to himself that he also have feelings for her.
Mhm.
He has a very nice speech because he asked Bizarro to come closer to him, and she says that she won't because she looks ugly. And he says something about people not loving Supergirl because of how she looks, but how she is in the interior.
Mhm.
Again, because it comes from the conversation that Bizarro knows that Supergirl has feelings for James because they are the same. So he's trying to get to her about being good, basically.
Yes. Yes.
But at the same time, he's also trying to tap on the super watch so he
Yep.
can call Supergirl.
Yep.
Which it kind of backfires because then Bizarro calls him a liar.
Yeah.
She attacks him, but because she attacks him, at the same time, James kind of touches the watch and it alerts Supergirl, and Supergirl hears him calling her and also Bizarro.
Mhm.
They have a fight, and Alex come in with what they call the blue kryptonite. That is basically something that the Dio synthesized supposedly with the opposite effects of the green kryptonite.
Mhm.
Many air quotes around there. But
Yes.
uh, basically, Alex shoots Bizarro and she goes down after a really cool fight. Another cool fight. We had really three fights that were really good
Mhm.
in this episode.
Yes.
Then we have a scene of Alex going and arresting Max before she's doing
Oh, you're
the whole
right. Yeah.
kryptonite thing.
Yeah.
This scene will come and haunt me in the few future episodes
Yep.
because now you're crossing a line of arresting this human guy, and I know that he's a billionaire and we don't
Mhm.
like billionaires, and we know that he's the bad guy, but also that is like jumping all the protocols and all the
Yes.
jurisdiction that this organization has. But I do like that Alex has a very cool line when after she
Mhm.
arrests Max, she goes back to John goes like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Mhm.
Because he also points out like this is outside the jurisdiction, and she's like, "He threatened my family. Which one do you think I care the most about?" And it is a very true line that Alex has the entire show about
Yeah.
how she prioritized her family, and I think that is a really nice touch to put on so early in the show's run.
Yes, definitely. I think it's like, yeah, for me, my brain was screaming like, "Oh my god, you just bypassed so many protocols, so many legal things, laws, whatever." But at the same time, it's like part of me is like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. And it makes sense for Alex, I think, that she would do that.
What is surprising, at least this early in the show, is later on Kara's thinking about this because we know that Kara is very much on board with this plan because she has been pushing for like 2 or 3 episodes now to go after Max,
Mhm.
and John is the one being like, we actually can't because Max is a human, a very public human, by the way. So
Mhm.
it is interesting, like how Kara's opinions about it change throughout the episode. But it is a commentary that I think is still relevant 10 years later. But
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
alas, Bizarro kinda ends up being almost dying because of the
Yeah.
blue kryptonite, and they take her to the DU and they basically put her back into a coma.
Mhm.
I did like this scene for Kara. I think it's a scene that highlights how kind she is,
Mhm.
how she prioritizes other people, but also it's a scene that kind of highlights how guilty she feels. And we go back to the entire survivor's guilt
Mhm.
because in her mind, I think this scene pretty much says that she feels like she condemned this person to suffer the same way she does.
Yeah.
Because the episode pretty much implies that this is unequal to Supergirl.
Mhm.
Like Bizarro said, they are the same. That, but I think in her
Mhm.
mind, Kara kind of equates that she basically doomed this Jane Doe into being her, and I don't think at this point, after what happened in this episode, Kara sees like a way out of it yet.
Yeah, I think there is this I think survivor's guilt's part of it. I think another part of it is also perhaps Carr realizing there's almost like consequence to her taking up the mantle she hadn't quite perceived before, right?
Yeah,
That there could be in a real way like genuine casualty and a non-necessary one at that, right? Like this is pretty nasty thing Maxwell Lord did. If you think about it, like it's pretty disturbing. And I think in some ways also, right, because she is like Kara actually says Maxwell Lord made her to be just like me, and she said, and she was. And in some ways you could argue that this is supposed to be a mirror, right? Like she's
yeah,
almost seen herself a little bit, and that can be jarring. But I think for me, I think one of the biggest things that stood out in this scene, and there's no way I'd ever be able to describe it other than people go watch this scene and really, really look at Melissa's eyes. Like, I really, really think this is a scene to me that this is who Supergirl is. Is you see the kindness, you see the genuine compassion, you see how much she genuinely feels for people. And not everyone is like that. It doesn't mean she doesn't have problems or rage or anything else going on, but I do think the core of this character is exactly what I feel like we've both been saying this whole podcast. She sees people, she's compassionate, she sees who they are, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And I think this scene is one of these scenes in the show that if I did a reel of here are scenes that show you who this person is, this would be there. And all it is her holding this girl's hand as she passes away. And that's it. That's all she did. It seems like nothing, but it's everything. And I that's why to me
yeah.
I think this scene stands out.
Yeah, what I do like is that in that scene, Bizarro, she says, "Thank you, Kara." It is the
Yes.
first time that she mentions her name. It is the first time that she see her not only as not the enemy, but also like a friend, a person, someone who cares. And I think that it is basically Bizarro shaking herself off of the influence of Max. And I think it
Mhm.
was a very brief scene of dialogue, and it conveys all that. Like you said, it just highlights how good a person Kara is. And you can see how affected she is, not only
Mhm.
about what Max did, but about the destiny of this person that was an innocent in her mind.
Mhm. Mhm.
They cut this scene with Kara going back to Katko as always, and she's trying to have like a conversation with James, and then you start to see like that loneliness that she kind of feels
Mhm.
because she tries to go out with James, right? As a romantic thing, as friends, because at this point Win is still a little bit like, in his distance kind of thing,
He's being his little, needing his space still.
needing his space. So Kara tries to like go out and have chicken wings with James. And James is like, "Yeah, I would love to, but I actually have to go pick Lucy from the airport because she went and visited her dad." Which I think is perfectly fair, but also like you can tell that James is also like trying to ignore his feelings for Kara.
Mhm.
It is pretty clear in this scene, but it leaves to Kara feeling like a bit lonely. So she
Mhm.
goes flying, I think, is
Yeah.
what they are implying, right? That she goes
Mhm.
flying and she goes to her Supergirl's duty, and then she goes home very late.
Yeah.
And we have a scene of Kara like going into her fridge and looking for something to drink.
Mhm.
And then she finds something in her coffee table at her living room. And she's like, what the hell? And then she turns around a little bit and something jumps her from the ceiling.
Mhm.
What a cliffhanger to end the episode on. Like I
Oh,
said,
yeah.
this is the start of a very good line of like 4 or 5 episodes that are very, very
Mhm.
solid. And this is the tease for us that are rewatching this season or the episode, the show. This is the tease for The Girl Who Has Everything and the Black Mercy.
Yes.
But what a way to end the episode
Oh
with
gosh, yeah,
another
yeah.
huge cliffhanger.
This season was really good at it, and in some ways, I'm almost starting to think of it as they just have really good connective tissue between a lot of these
Yes.
episodes. Not every single one, but a lot of
Yes.
these episodes have really good connective tissue that leads to having good cliffhangers. And honestly, I'm really enjoying that on this particular rewatch. I'm like, yeah, this is it makes you really want to watch the next episode, and then they're really good most of the time at like picking up right where they leave off, and that's really nice. I think one other thing I did notice in this episode is there's the scene between Max and Kara at the end. I think right before she
Yes.
goes back to Catco. And I think the thing I noticed about this scene about Kara is I think it ties into what you said that she really is feeling the consequences of what happened. I think also the consequences of like the fact that she is a superhero and out there now and doing things in the world is I love the contrast. So in this scene, he's in a DEO jail cell. And I really, really noticed this time that she can't stop moving around his cell because his cell's in the center of the room. Like she's pacing like a freaking like panther around him. And I think that's that low that she's feeling anger. She's feeling rage at this guy. She wants to do something to him. And she's holding herself back. You can tell because even the way she talks to him isn't normally how Kara speaks to people, especially as Supergirl. And then like basically then he of course threatens Eliza. Oh, and what do we get out of Kara? The thing that I
I
love. It's
love,
so delicious
I
when she
love,
does
I
this.
love when she's holding herself back. And
Oh.
I will say I love because we have in this season we have like 2 or 3 instances, but throughout the show we also have like maybe 6 or 7 total when she activates her heat vision, but she doesn't release the laser, and you
Mhm.
see just like her eyes glowing. I
Mhm.
love when they do that scene,
Oh yeah,
that
it's
that effect, because
beautiful.
it's literally like Kara holding herself down, like she wants to,
Mhm.
but she knows she can't,
Mhm.
like that she shouldn't do this,
Mhm.
but it's delicious. But I
Mhm.
love that Alex comes in immediately. It's like he's not worth it. Come on, let's
Mhm.
go.
Mhm.
And Max being the little shit that he is, like, goodbye, sisters. But again, I never quite connected with Max. Maybe
Mhm.
because he's too real. He's too real
He
in the
is a
sense that,
little real.
and
Yes.
he's like the billionaire, self-centered kind of guy that is too real, that I'm like, I don't really care. Actually, Kara, do the hit vision thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it feels very real on this rewatch, not gonna
Yes.
lie. I think the stuff related to Max in particular, because this season they did make it sort of a big thing that he is a billionaire and he's a public figure,
Yeah.
and so it's very out there. But yeah, the heat vision thing when she does this, particularly when it's related to someone she cares about. I think it's one of those things that sometimes I think you could get lulled into a sense of safety with Kara as a viewer because we see everything, right. We're not just seeing her as Kara, we're not just seeing her as Supergirl, we're seeing both.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like it's lost that anger is always there, that rage is always there, that she's impulsive, like you said. She is also hot-headed, like, right? Like that's always simmering.
Yeah.
Everything is simmering right below the surface with her, and Melissa's so good at it.
She's always raging. She's always like containing herself, but also she has a really good self control in that sense, because I think we will get there when she is like almost wrestling with those decisions and the decision to hold back or not hold back. But yeah, this episode is a really good Kara episode, I will say.
Mhm.
It is not overtly spelling out feelings, but I think it is exploring them quite
Yes.
well.
Also showing us, I think, particularly in the final scene with Bizarro there, I think showing the audience something important about Kara.
Yeah, absolutely. This episode can't be overlooked
Mhm.
in that sense. The Bizarro thing will always be interesting. And spoilers, Bizarro never comes back. We have other versions of Supergirl that pop in throughout the show, but Bizarro never quite comes back. And it is a shame, I think, that she
Mhm.
never did. I think it would have been an interesting thing to explore for Kara or for Alex for that matter. But yeah, this was the episode that we had for you today. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching and listening.
Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed. El Mayara.
El Mayara.